Welcome back. You're watching The Capital Point. If you're joining us on social media, we're streaming live on YouTube. We're streaming live on Facebook and Twitter as well. Please join the conversation. The hashtag is The Capital Point. The handle is at Metropole TV KE. In studio with me is the CEO of Uchumi, Mr. Mohammed. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Just reading from social media, everybody seems to say this is a very brave man. You know, the vision, the vision of a company is, is carried by one person, and that's you. What's the current state of Uchumi?
Okay, right now we're going through a transition because of the challenges that we're facing, and we are trying to get a creators plan approved by all the creators, because that marks the beginning of kind of like the takeoff, because you can't take off without even the creators supporting you. So majority of the trade creators actually are supporting us. We've recently been engaging some secured creditors to get the full support, so that the creators plan can actually be enforced. Yeah, or it can be applied.
All right, and of course we'll break that down as we carry on with this conversation, because there's quite a bit that's been happening around Uchumi lately.
Yes, there's a lot. Yeah.
First of all, I get a great reprieve from the courts. You can now stay in your premises without being evicted. What does this mean for the business?
Well, it's short term. I mean, the retrieve is for the time, as long as the matter is in court, then we've got the stay orders for the locations in other places. And that's hopefully also that on the approval of the CVA, that we should have the chance to continue business at least in the profitable locations that we have. Yeah.
So the CVA is expected back in court in another 2 weeks or so.
On 7th November.
On the 7th of November. Then what are your expectations though, and what scenarios are you looking at? Because you had some creditors saying it's okay and some said no. On the 7th of September you go back to court. The court is 7th of November, you go back to court. The court is expecting your overall plan, and as well as how you expect to pay out the creditors.
Well, okay, on a clarification, the plan has already been provided.
Yes.
We also had a creditors meeting on the 13th of May in Bomas of Kenya, where a majority of the trade creditors actually supported the plan. So, what the plan does basically under the Insolvency Act of 2015 is that it draws a line between the old and current. So it should be able now, it allows the business now to be able to proceed. It doesn't mean that the old totally disappears. All it does is that it has requested for a 30% discount, and the 70% is split into two. The remaining 70%, the 40% is going to be kept aside, as we are still looking for other alternative funding, because we're not going to get all the funding right now. And then the 30% is to be paid over a period of, I think, 4 to 5 years, based on the cash flows and the business as it picks up. Because now, once we're able to generate stability on the business, then of course you can be able to attract other funding models that can be able now to resolve that other amount that has been parked aside. So we're not really writing off. Sometimes what I see being reported, there's no 70% write-off or anything. We are simply just keeping it aside for now and saying let's start afresh and we move forward.
Thank you so much for that clarity on the 70% specifically. The company voluntary arrangement is a model that many of us do not really understand. If you can just go into depth a little bit and tell us how it works in a way that a layman will understand.
It gives a chance to the company to still be able to run its affairs, unlike in administration, because the difference with because under the Insolvency Act you've got 4 parts, the 4 ways in which you can actually be able to follow up on the company matters. There's administration, there's scheme of arrangement, which is I think what KQ is doing, and CVA, which is what Uchumi is pursuing, and eventually if it doesn't work you go to liquidation. So all it does is that you provide a plan, and you see everyone is engaged, all the stakeholders are involved towards driving the company forward. Unlike the previous act where maybe you only had let's say the financial institutions who could dictate on what is to be done. In this case or this scenario, all the stakeholders are involved. The shareholders, the creditors, the secured, unsecured creditors and secured creditors all take part in that model. So once they buy in and accept, then the matter is agreed upon in court. It's signed off, and then now we're able now to move the business forward. So in layman's terms, it's just a creditors agreement or arrangement for purposes of the business to be able to move forward. And it's being used in the developed countries, in the US and in Europe. I can't say that it's a 100% success rate, but it has a fair, I mean, there's a fair level of expectation at least to be able to safeguard the interest of all the stakeholders. Because if we go on the extreme, then the likelihood of the unsecured creditors not getting anything is very high. Yes, and that's what we're trying to say.
All right. So what if the opposite happens? You know, the other scenario of the creditor said no.
The creditors have said yes.
What if they change their mind again? Because not all the creditors have said yes.
Yeah, not all of them. Well, it will be unfortunate, and it will be. I mean, of course, the brand will go down, and it will be very unfortunate because I think it's a Kenyan and national brand that everyone should be working towards bringing it up. Yeah.
So how many branches are you currently operating, and where are they?
We've got 5+1 active branches, okay, and the other ones we are looking at reopening when we get the money, but the ones which are functioning is Jogoo Road, Aga Khan Walk, Adams, Meru and Eldoret, and Nairobi West is operating under franchise. So then there's Langata Hyper, which we're looking at seeing how we can be able to improve on it through a different concept. And then there's Ngong Hyper. Ngong Hyper is not operating, but and there's also Buruburu.
All right. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the Langata concept and what will be different about it.
No, it's just to see, it's one of the things which will be moving forward is also to see how we can be able to optimize our existing assets, how we can sort them out and be able to generate, even as you're growing the core business, you can be able now to use some of the alternative business channels in order to be able to compensate at least for additional revenue to the business. Yes.
So is that letting or selling the property?
No, we're not selling. It's not about selling. We're not selling. The only property that we're selling right now is the Kasarani, which the matter is in the public. Yes, yeah. It's not in court. It's in the public domain where we are trying to resolve the matter with some people who've occupied the place.
KDF.
That's what I've heard maybe in the papers. KDF. All
right, but how far are you in as far as that property, the 20 acres is concerned?
Well, the position of Uchumi is that it holds legal title to that land. So it was an unfortunate incident where some people went and occupied the place seemingly by force or something. But as we speak, where we are right now, I mean, we hold the title and we hold everything, and we do expect a positive outcome. But I cannot say much about that because there's still talks and negotiations going on, and it's being handled at a very high level at the government offices. So we hope that it can be resolved as soon as possible.
All right. Yes. Let's talk about the turnaround strategy for a bit. And I know you mentioned the franchise, the 5+1. Can you tell us a little bit about the franchise model that you're going into so we can also get into some of the other initiatives that you're looking out for a turnaround strategy?
Well, the franchise model is something that had been talked about even from the time of Julius. And even if you look at the financial statements, it has been there because we've talked about e-commerce, we've talked about franchise, we've talked about the mini stores and convenience stores. So all we're doing right now, we're simply just executing what has already been talked about. Yeah. Of course, now that we are monitoring the process of the franchise and to see how it can be extended or whether it can work, we're also looking at the issue of e-commerce. And we're still going to look at the issue of express shops and convenience stores. Then again, as we move forward. Yes.
How is it? What's the model of the franchise currently? And when you go out to investors, what are you telling them?
For the franchise.
For the franchise.
Well, ideally, what we did is that we franchised our branch. One of the things. But what we're going to look at in future is franchise external other branches where they can be able to use our brand. So that then Uchumi, I mean, as a business, focuses more on the brand management and infrastructure and as a business moving forward. Yes.
I guess the biggest question for Kenyans, if the responses I'm seeing online is anything to go by, is so I get in as a franchise holder and an investor. Do the problems of Uchumi fall on me, or am I starting a brand new business, so to speak?
No, the problems of Uchumi don't follow you. Okay. And even right now, once we get the approval of the CVA, then there's really nothing to worry about.
What are your projections in as far as the revenues from the franchising model?
That is based on royalty income.
Yeah.
And now, as we move forward, the perfect model will be now also Uchumi supplying the stocks to the franchise. Because you see on the royalty income, we're looking at about 3%, okay, of the turnover. Which so now in order to be able to, on average, I'm not saying the 3%, but on average you're looking at about between 2 to 3%, and but now you'll be able to improve or improvise on it further by now being able to supply through Uchumi once we grow, because then we can be able to improvise on the economies of purchasing of scale. Yeah.
What's the size of the investment? If an investor, if I'm keen on putting in some money into an Uchumi franchise, approximately how much should I be looking at?
It's hard to tell because it varies depending on the size of the branch. But you see, if you're starting your own, the biggest investment will be the stocks, your inventory. And if you already have an existing infrastructure, and you want to work with Uchumi on a co-branding basis, or maybe just using the Uchumi brand name, then mostly the investment will be on your inventory. Yes.
That's interesting. So you are, possibly looking at partnerships with already existing retailers who may not have a big brand per se.
Yes. Okay. There's also that possibility of looking at those partnerships. There's possibilities of of having your own. So all those are possibilities. Okay. Yes.
Now, in the latest governance report by the Capital Markets Authority, I think it was early this week or last week, Uchumi was mentioned as one of the companies that has violated reporting requirements. What's your response to that?
We've currently invested in a corporate governance team, which we want to work on. And even when it comes to reporting, we've been briefing also CMA on those matters, on what is going on. There are genuine issues behind that, because there's no deliberate effort not to report. Of course, you want to report, but I think those are matters which we've highlighted to CMA, and they're aware, and they're monitoring. We have to keep updating them all the time. So it's not that. So we are also under a lot of pressure from CMA, and even the Nairobi Stock Exchange, because of course investors would like to see that, but there's some other genuine reasons behind that may be why the delay has happened. Yes.
Any indications of when, perhaps?
Because we've already had the plans with the auditors, and we want to start as soon as possible. Let me not commit to a date right now, but I'm sure soon, within the next few weeks, I can be able now to give a proper date of when they can come out.
Okay, all right. Let's talk about the trends within the market space. We've seen the likes of the big boys get into the Kenyan market from the UAE, from South Africa. And I'm just curious about your thoughts about competition and getting back into that space and trying to reclaim your space.
The market is big. I'm not even looking at them as, okay, they are competition. They are playing in a different market. And where Uchumi was before, of course we can't compare that, because they've also taken some of the spaces that Uchumi had occupied. So I'm not looking at so far at competing with them per se. I'm looking at just working on on what we have and growing my own market, or rather our own market, as we move forward.
How would you classify the differences in the markets between the big boys and Uchumi?
What do you call them, big boys?
Oh, you big boys.
The market entrance. It's unfortunate that I have no problem with international companies, but it should also have been very good for us to have the local players also at that scale. It's really unfortunate, but that's the reality on the ground. Of course, they've come with, I think, from what I can see, they've got some better efficiencies in how they're doing their business, the handling, in which even for us, we must, as local players, we need to up our game in order to be able to catch up. So, those are some of the things that, which are positive, that we probably have to do it. But really, and if you look at the products or other things, it's the same. There's nothing different. And possibly even some local, they've had a way of how to win the market, and they came at the right time when, unfortunately, some of the leading supermarkets were facing distress and challenges. And they took advantage of that, and the opportunity came in. And that's business. It happens.
All right.
Yeah.
So given the space they're currently operating in and your strategy where convenience stores and the mini markets are concerned, how do you intend to play in that space?
Mostly, if you notice, with the so-called big boys.
You used the name as well.
Which you've called. They are mostly in the hyper business. Okay. We are not in the hyper business right now because we are looking more at the supermarkets and the convenience stores. And I think, and even the future of, and I'm very sure that in future they will probably also be looking into that, because I know that the trends, the way they're moving, is more about convenience, okay, and convenience pricing in the range. So if you're able now, because the malls are becoming more of an outing, but you know, with like what you mentioned, that you know, with the shrinking passes and everything of people, it's easier for them just to get to a nearby place to be able to buy the day-to-day products. Yeah.
So where will we see Uchumi then?
You want me to release my secret?
I don't want you to release your secret. Just the scenarios, because I mean, we're seeing Quickmart get into, you know, some petrol stations, Mag & Bean partnering with some convenience stores as well.
Total and all that, and Quickmart is Quickmart. The concept is slightly different, but they're also getting there. But of course, we will be competing on some of those locations in some spaces. But watch the space. Let's first wait and see that this CVA is approved, and then now we see how we take off.
You talked about funding models or alternative funding models, and I'm just curious if you would be looking at raising capital from external partners, or possibly looking at collaboration or being acquired, merging with an international retail store?
All those are on the table. I mean, we, of course, looking at external funding, looking at possibly investors, because the challenge, to be above board and honest, I mean, a major challenge of Uchumi is anyone keeps fearing about the old debt. It's nothing to hide about. And, you know, if you're able to get a resolution on those old matters, I think then the conversation changes, because it's very hard right now even to engage some of these financiers or funders or investors when, you know, when you keep having these old matters hanging, this dark cloud hanging over you. It's very hard to convince sometimes some people. But the good thing is, I believe that the brand is strong, because the name itself, it's you know, I mean, it's economy, and it's being used by almost everyone. Even when the president is standing out there and speaking about in Kiswahili, he mentions the word Uchumi. So it's a strong brand, and I think it has an opportunity to get back on its feet with the right structures.
E-commerce, how is that space looking for you?
It's of course, it's something that we are looking into it. But from what I see, it's still, the penetration is still kind of a bit tough, because we've seen some players coming in, and they're not, I mean, there've been some struggles over there, because, you know, one of the challenges you have is the last mile. But but I know one way or another, like M-Pesa, eventually it will take off, yes.
How do you intend to get back your brand equity and brand trust from Kenyans? You know, I mean, it's Kenya's second supermarket after Chandarana. It's been the brand that, you know, most Kenyans have known for forever. So brand equity and brand trust will definitely be pivotal in the turnaround.
From what I see, mostly from the people and the customers, the key thing that they want is just to make sure we are fully stocked. Okay, we're able to go back to the customer service that we used to have, and then also be the best, offer the best prices in the market, especially on the fresh products, produce, and support our farmers. Because in as much as people might be disgruntled by Uchumi, but, you know, also look on the flip side. Uchumi has also contributed significantly to the economy. And even where, I mean, even most of these big companies today that may be looking down on Uchumi really started with their products on the shelves of Uchumi. So let's not forget that, because where we are, even Kenya being as an economic superpower within the East African community, largely, I mean, has happened because of that platform that had been created by the government since the 70s for the manufacturers to be able to warehouse their products. Yeah, and that has been a success, even if you compare with the other East African countries in Kenya today. Yeah.
Any possibilities of rebranding? New name, new look?
That has not been discussed so much, but then of course...
Is it on the table though?
There have been proposals and suggestions, but it will have to be really managed very well so that you don't totally distort the brand if at all you have to go that way. Which
side do you fall on? For a rebrand or not for a rebrand?
I like the brand the way it is.
You like the brand?
Yeah.
Okay. You're a true Kenyan?
Yes.
So just tell us a little bit about, as we wind up, what your expectations are for Uchumi as we get into 2020.
It's just to be able to start afresh, to get suppliers on board, get our employees back engaged, because we've and be a force to reckon with in the market as we move forward. Yes.
All right. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for making time to join us on Metropole TV. Of course, there's a lot that we as business journalists have been keen on finding in terms of what your strategy is, and I'm sure the same applies to Kenyans as well. It's a heritage brand that,
and it's a company owned by Kenyans, and of course every Kenyan has a right. And our books are open to scrutiny. I mean, we have to be transparent, and we have to, which is an advantage and disadvantage, because you see, I have to disclose everything that I try to do, and it's very easy for it to be adapted also in other places or by other players. But then it's okay. I mean, it's fine as long as we're being transparent. We're okay with that.
So, in the spirit of transparency and disclosure, how much is your debt currently?
It has not changed significantly to what it was before, because we've not been incurring additional debt. We've had the debt as it is.
So how much is it?
For trade creditors, stands about 3.5B, and for the other creditors, approximately about 1B, and for the secured creditors, it's about 2.5B. Yeah.
All right. And I know I said we're winding up, but just as a final question, you're the carrier of the vision, and your name will either go up or go down based on the performance of Uchumi. How do you remain confident in the face of so much criticism and everything that has dogged Uchumi to where it is today?
Well, first of all, I think I carry the face of Uchumi right now, but the vision is driven by all of us who've remained loyal to Uchumi as the employees where we are. I'm working with amazing employees, because for them to keep loyal and to have confidence, and they keep also encouraging me. Because I'm not saying that it's been an easy journey for me. It's not. And of course, I do face challenges, personal challenges and everything. But I think the strength lies within and through the networks that, and the belief that this company can be able to turn around. And if it doesn't, my personal satisfaction is that I have tried my best. Because I didn't cause the problems of Uchumi. I'm trying to provide a solution of Uchumi. And I believe, and because of that, I work with that passion to make sure that at least we can be able to get back on our feet.
All right.
Yes.
We do wish you all the very best.
Yes.
And thank you so much for joining us. We've been speaking with Mohammed Mohammed, the Chief Executive Officer of Uchumi Supermarkets. We'll take a quick break, and when we return, we'll have an analysis on the trends and the state of Kenya's retail sector, and we'll be speaking with Isaac Kamau, an investment associate at Nabo Capital. Don't go too far.